Thanks, David. Thanks for the opportunity to talk today to your audience and your listeners. So Envirosuite is an Australian company based here in Melbourne, but we have a global reach with over 400 customers around the world. Today, I'm going to talk you through what we do and some examples of how we benefit customers around the world. Go to the next slide, please. So Envirosuite, by its name, is an environmentally focused company, and we believe environmental intelligence is the key to improving the well-being of people and the planet. We recognise that communities have to coexist along with industries, and what we look for is the intersection of how industries can thrive and communities can grow at the same time, whilst minimising the impact to the environment. Next slide, please. We operate in three environments: in air, on land, and in water. So in air, we have an aviation suite of software products. In land, we go by the term omnis, which is Latin for everything. And in that, we have the broadest capability globally of an environmental intelligence software platform. And in EVS water, we're looking at drinking water, treatment facilities, sewage networks. So I'm going to give you a bit of an understanding of each one now. If we go to the next slide. Focusing on airports, we're number one globally within commercial aviation airports. So that is your Heathrows, your Los Angeles, your New Yorks, your Tullamarine and Mascots here. And so what we look at is when a plane comes into land, we're actually able to measure the noise that it emits at landing or takeoff. And from overlaying that with fairly complex models on radar feeds, actually the speed of which it comes down the descent. Now, why is that important? Airports around the world need to understand what is the noise impact to their communities around them. I'm sure many of the listeners have flown into Heathrow and see that the houses are stacked up against their side, or even at Mascot, the flight path going directly over Sydney. So if we go to the next slide there, what we're really wanting to do is focus on the community engagement within airports. So this is an example of protesters looking at being quite disgruntled with excessive noise from planes landing and taking off. We focus on solving that problem through a community engagement piece, as well as understanding what is the noise impact of planes. So if you look at the next slide, we're starting to go through here through our software. We track individual flight paths, individual planes coming in, and we visualize what that airport noise impact is going to be. And we work with airports around the world, so they use our software. It's embedded into their operations. But importantly here, we're empowering the communities to connect with airports. If you are feeling that there was excessive noise, we give you a portal to go in. You can see which flight path directly affected you from that portal. And you can provide feedback into airports to say, this was my feeling, this is what I experienced. And the airports then proactively work with the communities to make sure that they're minimising that disruption. So as I said, globally, we are number one within the commercial aviation part. If we go to the next slide, we'll start to focus in on the Omnis platform, which is directly looking up air quality, water quality, odour, noise, and vibration. There's a really bad statistic around the impact of air pollution on our communities around the world. And the World Health Organization put out this stat recently, around 7 million deaths a year are contributable to poor air quality. Now, we're not making the air quality sensor. Ours is a software play here, but we connect up to existing air sensors or instrumentation that may go in. So let's look at that, the next slide. Here is an example of one of our product managers going to a mining site here in Australia. And it shows the impact of iron ore dust if not managed correctly. This was a car that was parked in the car park for 4 days. It's actually located up in Port Hedland, where there is a major loading facility there. And that iron ore has to shift along that conveyor belt for about 2 kilometres and goes onto ships. All of the major mining companies at Port Hedland use our software to actually understand what is going to be the impact. So the power of our platform, we can actually predict 24 hours out what are the right operating parameters to effectively manage their asset or their industrial facility. In this case, it's Port Hedland and that facility. So we go to the next slide. We're starting to now really address this predictive part. So monitor, predict, and plan with that continual situational awareness. What that means is that's constantly updating the model. The image on the right, you can see our software actually being used. And so that can be applied to different types of facilities. And while I gave you the example of mining and Port Hedland, we also have waste facilities, landfill facilities, industrial facilities, and wastewater from an odour perspective. And they use this and embed this software tool into their operational plans. So they can actually forecast, at 3 p.m. tomorrow, where they should be operating on their facility to minimise the impact that they're having on the communities that they affect. We go to the next slide. So urbanisation is a really, really strong driver globally, right? More people are moving into cities all around the world. What is that having an impact on? It's having an impact on the quality of water, on air, and noise. Now, this is not a trend that's going to stop, right? More people are going to move into cities, but we're not going to stop the quality of life that we want to have. And let's start with the first topic, which is drinking water. So next slide shows you an image of, a poor water quality situation. None of us would accept this. The water utilities around the world, they need to provide clear drinking water. That's the first part. It has to meet regulation control. What we've seen with the impacts of climate change, however, are the number of variables coming into that water supply chain. So there's a lot of treatment that has to go before you get that clean drinking water. Those drinking water and desalination plants around the world, they require electricity and they require chemicals to actually provide that output. What we've developed here is a product which we call Optimizer, which is a software solution that sits into water facilities. And that will then focus on using artificial intelligence and deterministic modeling ways to reduce the energy and also the chemical dosage required. So this has a strong return on investment for our water utility companies around the world. So whilst we maintain or improve the water quality, we're actually reducing the energy and the chemicals that go in. So moving to the next slide. So that gives you an example there of actually the water process plant in action. We actually recently were recognised globally with this award, being recognised by Frost and Sullivan for a digital twin. So this will go into an existing facility and have a substantial impact, addressing climate change, as well as addressing the bottom line of the way that those facilities are run. Moving to the next slide, we talk about a different offering in our water group, which is what we call SUEX. Think of the sewerage networks that go around in all of the major towns around the world. That sewage network sits underground, but if there's a leak or if there's a break or if there's corrosion, then we don't know where that actually is. And so large areas of road are dug up to identify the problem. There's also impacts around methane. There's also impacts around other gases that are emitted. So we worked with the University of Queensland to bring a product to market. Next slide, which will show you here how we can actually, via software models, identify areas of impact. Now, what we're looking for is corrosion. What we're looking for is H2S and methane. So first of all, addressing the safety part, we're actually able to identify where buildup of methane gases are and also where H2S is. And so that from a safety perspective, we can actually start to manage and predict. Importantly, from corrosion, we can actually see where there are going to be areas. And so that red on that image could show you areas where we can mitigate that or where corrective action needs to take place. Next slide. So momentum is building. Envirosuite is a fast-growing company. Last year, we had 24% growth year on year within our Omnis part. And we were selected as part of consortium within our aviation business for NASA for supersonic testing. Next slide. And that is a close on that. So I think we're ready to take any questions.
Thanks, Jason. A great presentation. A couple of questions for me. Is the addressable market, for each of these business units, what sort of market size or market opportunity is there?
Yeah, we're breaking that down. So as a company whole, we have a $4 billion serviceable addressable market. So it's a very large market to go after. Water is the biggest of that market with identified $2.8 billion. So those are very, very large market. And that's the one that we're really putting effort behind. And we're seeing some really good, strong traction to get through. The Omnis part has around $1.1 billion market. And then the aviation is a smaller part with what we currently serve.
And in terms of what it could grow to, has there been any independent predictions on what that market could be in 4 to 5 years' time?
What we're seeing certainly from a climate change perspective and the investment into water infrastructure, if you look at the back of Biden's bill that has recently passed in North America, significant amount of money is now flowing into water. So we probably need to go back and have that independently assessed. Is that growing now? I think with the impact around methane and on the back of COP26, you would see that certainly from our Omnis, our environmental platform, we're getting a stronger inbound lead, so that potentially that is growing as well. But it probably is time that we get that independently updated.
And just talking about leads, how does the lead process work? And then from lead to delivery, what sort of customer journey do you take people on?
Yeah, so leads are a multitude of different areas. So the first and foremost is our website, right? So people are coming in through our website. Some people are attending webinars and coming through. We are starting to get some what we call viral network effect happening, certainly in the States. So with some of the Omnis portfolios going into towns where they're actually seeing that we're addressing some odor problems or industry issues, other cities are starting to pick up on that as well. So that's actually a really good sign for us. In the water space, we made an ASX announcement recently on Water Corp, and then other utilities in Australia have actually reached out on the back of that to us to say, hey, listen, come and have a conversation with us, which has been very, very good.
You mentioned Water Corp, and I understand it's a proof of concept piece of work being done there. What's the time frame on delivery of that?
Look, we're expecting to bring that POC to full completion probably in end of Q3 next year, start of Q4. But we're going through a strong validation. The technology we know works. This is more around how the project goes in, how we interact with the customer, how the customer engages with the data set, and what those validation points are. As I said, the actual technical part was actually developed with University of Queensland. So we know that it's sound technology.
And it must be a crowded space. How competitive is it? And what's your competitive advantage?
Interestingly enough, it's not a crowded space. So within the SUEX, so that was the sewage part, there is no single competitor on the planet at the moment. So that is very good for us. It's our opportunity to move forward and implement our strategy. We're seeing some emerging competitors come through in the optimizer part, but no one is using artificial intelligence and deterministic modeling. And so our advantage there is being able to build on that and the capabilities that brings. In Omnis, because we now have vibration, noise, odor, air quality, and water quality, nobody has that amount of environmental parameters coming into a predictive modeling platform. Aviation is different. Aviation does have competitors out there, but we are 60% market share globally, and we're certainly seen as the market leader in that place.
And in terms of how you get paid, and it may differ from product to product, but you get paid on installation and then a SaaS style monthly recurring or yearly recurring fee. And once you're embedded, and it's pretty hard to shake.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's exactly that. We get a paid one-time fee for implementation, and then there's an annual subscription moving forward. Some customers we have for more than 20 years. We've been in Port Hedland for over 10 years. So yeah, that's certainly, long-standing relationships.